Friday's debate, which is focused on domestic issues, is likely to highlight the stark policy differences between the first-term senator and ORourke, who was a little-known House member representing a strongly Latino district in El Paso before he announced his long-shot bid to unseat Cruz last year. Meanwhile, Cruz, whose campaign in 2012 was based largely on his pledge to work to end Obamacare, a bill that eventually failed by one vote in the Senate, is still promising to overturn the program, blaming it for a rise in the cost of health care premiums in Texas. ORourke, who calls health care a basic human right, has vowed to protect the Affordable Care Act from repeal and has argued the nation should go further by establishing a single-payer health care system. He has also called for Texas to expand access to Medicaid. Cruz opposes the expansion. Yet the most divisive issue in the race, and one that polls suggest is the most important issue to Texas voters heading into the final weeks before Election Day, has been immigration. While Cruz has been a strong supporter of Trump's call for a new border wall along the U.S. border with Mexico, of which roughly 1,200 of the 1,950 miles would be built in Texas, ORourke strongly opposes it, saying the border with Mexico has never been safer. The congressman has called for an end to the militarization of immigration enforcement, prompting Cruz to attack him as soft on the issue. In an ad released earlier this week, Cruz accused ORourke of wanting to decriminalize unauthorized border crossings. ORourke's campaign says that misrepresents his actual position, which is to not press criminal charges against asylum seekers, a relatively small subset of border crossers. Cruz also accused ORourke of wanting to get rid of the Immigration and Customs Enforcement (ICE) agency, an issue on which the Democrat has waffled amid pressure from his supporters. In June, ORourke said he was open to the idea of getting rid of the agency but later clarified he wanted to abolish the practices of ICE. But while immigration is surely an issue that will help Cruz turn out supporters in a strongly conservative state, it is a topic could also prove tricky, especially with independents and even moderate Republicans who are more aligned with the compassionate conservatism championed by another famous Texan, former President George W. Bush. In an increasingly diverse state with a long history of welcoming immigrants, Cruz has alienated some voters with his opposition to allowing a path to citizenship for so-called dreamers, immigrants brought over the border illegally as children, something ORourke strongly supports. And over the summer, Cruz saw his poll numbers plummet amid bad headlines over Trump administration's forced separation of migrant kids and their parents, a policy that Cruz at first defended before switching positions. ORourke has called the policy un-American. But although they were elected the same year and have served 6 years together in the same delegation, ORourke is one of 36 House members from Texas. It's unclear how often the two men interacted. In fact, in interviews, Cruz and ORourke couldn't agree on whether they had even met each other before this campaign. In Congress, I know most of the members of the Texas delegation. I've worked with many members of the Texas delegation the last 6 years, Cruz told NewsPulse News in an interview in July. Until he announced for Senate, I had never met him once, to the best of my knowledge in terms of legislative battles in Congress. Congressman ORourke has not been a visible part of any of them. Since ORourke had announced, Cruz added, he had met the congressman a couple of times, adding, I don't know him well. In the fall of that year, ORourke said he had met with Cruz again in the midst of a 16-day federal government shutdown over funding for Obamacare, in which the junior senator from Texas had played a leading role. ORourke said he had gone to visit Cruz to remind him that El Paso has the 5th highest concentration of federal employees in the country, including Border Patrol agents and workers at other federal facilities like the William Beaumont Army Medical Center near Fort Bliss, one of the largest Army installations in the country. I said, these are your constituents. They're my constituents. You're really hurting them in what you're doing, ORourke recalled. But Cruz, he said, seemed unmoved. ORourke said he had many other meetings with Cruz and with Texas Senior Senator John Cornyn, also a Republican, with whom he sponsored a bill to improve infrastructure and add personnel at entry points along the Texas border to help with security and trade. both men arrived to the debate with distinct skills. Cruz, a college debate team champion at Princeton, is considered one of the most skilled debaters in the political arena. And as a politician, he has gotten more practice, including nearly 24 debates and forums he participated in when he was running for the 2016 Republican presidential nomination. In the last year, he participated in 2 televised debates on health care and taxes with Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont, the former Democratic presidential candidate who, like ORourke, backs single-payer health care. While ORourke has considerably less debate experience, the handful of debates he participated in back in El Paso, including in his first race for city council, were heated and marred by ugly personal attacks. In one, an opponent accused ORourke, who was arrested for driving while intoxicated in 1998, of being an alcoholic. ORourke, a friend recalled to Texas Monthly, remained completely cool. So far, ORourke has refused to go negative, even as Cruz and his allies have ratcheted up attacks in recent weeks. One ad used heavily edited video to suggest ORourke, who has defended the right of National Football League players to kneel in protest during the national anthem, supports burning the American flag. In an interview last weekend, ORourke again insisted he would not go negative no matter how ugly the race gets. There is the temptation, he admitted. But, the people of this state have asked me to resist that temptation and instead focus on what's important, so that's what we're going to continue to do. But the debate is likely to test whether ORourke can stick to that promise. And it's likely also to be a test of whether the charisma he has exhibited as a campaigner, attracting rock star crowds of thousands of people by embracing Obama-esque message of hope and inspiration about the future, can translate to the smaller stage against an opponent who is likely to come at him aggressively. It remains to be seen how aggressive Cruz will be. In recent months, Cruz has worked hard to be a more congenial colleague in the Senate and more likable on the trail, cracking jokes and playing basketball with late-night host Jimmy Kimmel to show a different side of his personality. What is unknown is whether he will put that on hold to go after ORourke in a race where he desperately needs Republicans to turn out.